Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, Kevin Durant eligible for an extension, but he's in Paris. What is the status of those negotiations, and should the Suns prioritize giving KD that new deal? We'll break it all down next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Brendon Kleen, your host and a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons. Welcome in. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Wednesday. Hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. All you got to do is hit that button, get a new episode in your feed every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday through the month of August, back to daily in September and through all of next season. Become an everydayer here with the show and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns whenever you need that dose of hoops. Joining us for the first time is Ben Garcia. He is a producer over at Fox Sports 910, does some YouTube content of his own, which will be linked in the show description below. And we have a lot of Kevin Durant to get to today. I want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports aren't quite what we want them to be, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with the boost or a bonus daily. That's right, something for everybody, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ben, I'm a little bit, I was questionable coming into this one. I pulled the crap out of my neck this morning.
Wow.
Not doing anything that I don't normally do, but my body just did not agree with me. So if I'm at a weird angle or I'm like, bad body language, I'm just going to get that out of the way now that very well could happen. But I sent you an article before we hit record here that comes from Dwayne Rankin over at the Arizona Republic looking at Kevin Durant, who became extension eligible for a 1-year, $59.7 million deal back on July 12th. We kind of left it on the back burner after the insane trade rumors came out about the Rockets and everything around draft time, but that extension eligibility has come and gone. Obviously, Durant has been with Team USA. That 1 year would be the 2026-2027 season. And Suns CEO Josh Bartelstein says they expect to have those negotiations when he gets back, when the Olympics are over, and he reiterated what Matt Ishbia has said all summer. Kevin loves being here. We love having Kevin here. How likely do you think this extension is to actually happen? When the season breaks in October, do you think Kevin Durant will be on the Suns for 1 year more guaranteed with this new deal?
Yeah, so that's not exactly what I thought you were going to go with, but it's the right question. Do I think he's going to have an extension? Everything Matt Ishbia has showed me and everything Matt Ishbia has demonstrated to every Suns fan is he will double and triple down even if he's not sure if it's the right decision. So absolutely, I believe he will be a Phoenix Sun potentially for the rest of his career. I think there's a chance they even go even further down the line. Maybe not this year around, but extending Kevin Durant for as long as they can, because that is Matt Ishbia's baby to an extent. That was the first guy that he pushed over the finish line with Kevin Durant. So I absolutely believe he's going to make that happen. He will do whatever it takes to continue to make Kevin Durant happy, because although Matt Ishbia is a great owner, he's a young owner, and he's willing to make some mistakes if he thinks for right now it will work out. And everything we've heard from Matt Ishbia is that he believes this team can win a championship. So if this team does win a championship, extend him for 6 more years. No one in Arizona cares about that. But what's more likely is they probably don't, which even if the Suns have the best season ever next year, it's really hard to win a championship. And that's what I feel like a lot of Suns fans don't necessarily grasp sometimes, that even if you have the best team, things can go haywire. And so with this Matt Ishbia thing, I absolutely believe he'll double and triple down on this. Although I don't think it's the right decision. Oh yeah, Kevin Durant will get an extension, and I think it'll happen fairly soon after the Olympics.
Yeah. I think that's fair. We can talk about whether it's the right decision next. I just wanted to get out of the way whether we think that it will happen, because look, we are 3 weeks into him being eligible for this thing, and there was a lot of chatter around that extension and everything back even when the season first ended, and then when the Rockets tried to use Adrian Wojnarowski to, negotiate in public around a trade for this guy. But for anybody wondering, the Suns can only do a 1-year extension with Durant right now because of a weird rule in the CBA, actually courtesy of Chris Paul, former Sun, the age 38 rule. There's different rules for players who are 38 years old or older than there are for guys younger than that. So if you're in this weird space where your contract runs up against that age, you kind of have to do things where you cut it off right then and there. So that's why Durant would only really be able to get that 1 extra year on an extension. But like you said, Ben, he could clearly, if he becomes a free agent at some point, do as long of a deal as he wants to do whenever that time comes. Or once he turns 38, I believe he can extend wherever long he wants to after that. But look, I think the only way that Kevin Durant does not get an extension this summer is if he doesn't want to get an extension this summer, right? That's the only plausible situation that I could see it not happening. And that's, I think, part of why it got so much attention, because it's just this natural opportunity for both the team and the player to come together and say, here's how we feel. I agree with you that on Matt Ishbia, Josh Bartlestein, James Jones' side, on the Suns front office's side, of course, it's in their best interest to keep a great player in town that they gave up a lot to go get just like 18 months ago. But the question is going to be, does Durant want to do that? And even if he doesn't, I don't necessarily think that means he doesn't want to be on the team or anything, but, maybe he just wants to maintain his flexibility. I don't necessarily know. They could also do an extension next summer for that same season, and it won't be any different, no sweat off his back, but maybe there's a little bit of a sense in waiting. I don't know. He's older. I would just take the money. But the point is, unless he has something in his head that makes him say, I don't really want to lock myself in, then I just think this thing gets done. And ultimately, I don't blame anybody for wanting to do that personally, but it sounds like you might. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. The Kevin Durant thing is kind of interesting, right? Because we live in an NBA now where Kevin Durant would kind of be insane not to take the money and run. Because let's say Kevin Durant is very disgruntled. He signs a contract extension, a 1-year contract extension, which you mentioned, which I guess I should have mentioned a second ago. He could only just sign 1 right now. And then after that is what I was referring to, extra years if he becomes a free agent, do whatever he wants at that point. But the Kevin Durant thing is really interesting because we live in an NBA now that even if he signs his extension, if he's disgruntled because they're 500 at the All-Star break, name me an NBA player, a superstar, that hasn't gotten their way, whether it's Kyrie Irving, whether it's Anthony Davis, whoever it is. Players can force themselves out, and at times, i.e. Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant, they can force themselves to the destinations that they want to go to. So Kevin Durant absolutely will want this extension. I think if there's any tension between Matt Ishbia or Josh Bartlestein or James Jones that this potentially doesn't get done, we're talking about a much bigger story, which is Kevin Durant is already moody coming into training camp. The vibes are low after winning a potential gold medal in the USA Olympics. Whatever it is. You don't want moody Kevin Durant. So in a way, it kind of is a double-edged sword where you signed up. It's kind of like the Aaron Rodgers business. If you sign up for the Aaron Rodgers business, you better be all into the Aaron Rodgers business, which means you're accommodating him. You're doing whatever you can to keep him happy. And that's what you do with Kevin Durant. Those two guys have been linked consistently throughout their careers. You want to keep Kevin Durant happy because you don't like moody Kevin Durant. So if they do, and I guess I should say when they do extend him, there shouldn't be any real hesitation to do so because you really don't want to go into camp with a Kevin Durant that's already got some sort of attitude to him or a chip on his shoulder or feeling not wanted. But if you're asking me, I think it would be, I hate to say this because I was so into the Kevin Durant trade when it first happened, but I'm willing to admit I was wrong. And, we talked about this last week. It's important to realize when you're wrong. And Matt Ishbia and Josh Barlstein and James Jones, they might be wrong. And that's a harsh thing to come to it sometimes. But Kevin Durant has kind of not done anything to keep this core group together. In my opinion, if you're chasing a championship, that's all that Matt Ishbia has ever said he's wanted to do, then you are trying to put your team in the best position possible. And locking up Kevin Durant for another year on a fat deal could come back to bite you. And that's how I feel towards it.
Okay, so let's keep that rolling in the next segment because I want to look a little bit closer at the salary lineup of this thing because I think that the 1 year we're talking about doesn't really change the Suns' ultimate fate of being in this second apron and luxury tax and how long this window, like, to me, because we're talking about 1 year, that's part of why I just don't have an issue with it, but we'll cover that in a second. I think you're absolutely right, though, to tie a bow on this. The reason this matters, the reason that this conversation is worth having and that it's important to even just zoom out and say whether or not they should do it is in the NBA these days, I do think you're right that contract negotiations, they kind of happen separate from what team a player even wants to be on or sort of their happiness with the team. It's almost like you give me every dollar and every year that I am eligible for to keep me happy, and then every so often we'll circle back and have a conversation on whether or not I even want to be here. Those are separate in a way, but they obviously overlap, and if one doesn't go well, then the other one can get knocked down. So it is connected. Let's talk about what that window in the future kind of looks like and how that affects what the Suns are thinking as they look at offering KD that 1 year, $60 million extension. We'll do that all next. First, today's show brought to you by BetterHelp. I've said it before, I will say it again. BetterHelp is perfect for anybody who wants therapy brought to them easier. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day, maybe you never skip therapy day, or maybe you need to start thinking about the other one as just as non-negotiable as the other. I told you, I guess neck day was me today, but I will tell you that I also have grown to value therapy quite a bit because it's not just something that has to be connected to like these emergencies or trauma or these insane moments in your life or these really, really bad things. It can just be about keeping your rhythm, finding things to empower yourself, or setting boundaries, positive coping skills, all of these types of things that just make you the best thing that you are, same way that I was trying to do when I pulled my neck muscle, or the leg day example that they give here. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do to get started is fill out a questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Do it on your terms, like I said. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling here. So the Suns are looking at a deal for Durant in the 2026-2027 season. Again, 1 year, $59.7 million. It's 2 years out. That's why he's eligible now. That's the time in the NBA when these extensions become available to players. He had a 4-year deal originally. He's 2 years into it. Now he can sign an extension. But if you look at the other parts of this big three, Beal has a player option that season. Booker will be in year 3 of a deal of what has 4 years left on it, so he won't even be in the last year of his. So the rest of this roster might look a little different. I'm not sitting here telling you this whole thing will even last this long. I think we all know how much pressure is on this team this season, like you alluded to in the previous segment. But I don't think that this extension hampers their plans in one direction or the other from a financial standpoint all that much, which is why I tend to just come back to the fact of, like you said, Ishbia is going to see it as that 2026-2027 season. I'm already kind of pot committed to this whole thing. And if I'm not anymore, that'll be because I'm blowing the whole team up. So this Durant extension, to me, doesn't really materially change the whole big picture of what the Suns are dealing with, which is why I think if I'm KD, I know that, and I say, you just got to give it to me, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you have the 3 years, and as well as the Bradley Beal thing, like you alluded to. It does make it a little tough. To sit here, I think, and just give Kevin Durant an extra year, and at that point, it's like, oh, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, you're just already into it that deep. I'm not into digging myself a deeper hole. Now, it's a slippery slope. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I think that in a way, they kind of do have to give him the extension, but it's almost begrudgingly so, because you want to keep the guy happy. But if you add that extra year, it almost feels like this: if it doesn't work out this year, and they get rid of Kevin Durant at the end of the season, and they get whatever they can for him, adding that extra year to that contract, you're trying to get as much as you can for Kevin Durant as well as for what he has on his contract. But if you're trying to trade away and someone thinks, well, do I want Kevin Durant in year 38? Is he going to try to get me to give him a contract extension? Like, how much baggage is coming along with Kevin Durant? And that's the way I look at it is giving Kevin Durant an extension going to make it harder to get out of the Kevin Durant business if you need to? Because some teams next year might see Kevin Durant was awesome, but still take a step back, right? And the Suns trade him off, and teams are going to say, listen, he's showing slight signs of decline. Sure, he was really healthy the season before, but missed a couple extra weeks. Players get more injured as they get older, not healthier. I just think that you don't want to stack the cards against yourself, but it's just so hard. Because you have to balance, like I mentioned before, the emotions of Kevin Durant while trying to do what's best for this organization. So that's where I'm at on it, is what is the best way to get out of the Kevin Durant business if I can? Do I have an eject button? And that Bradley Beal year, let's say it doesn't work out. You're really only looking at 1 or 2 potential lost years for the Phoenix Suns if we're going into next year with just Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. And then you kind of retool, have a plan for the future, get off of the Bradley Beal contract, and then work on the next great Suns team where Devin Booker is only 29, 30 years old. So that's where I'm at it. But I'm always thinking ahead in these instances, which I'm sure the Suns are as well in this instance too. But still, that's where I'm at on it, is you just have to be willing to give yourself an out on these things. But it's hard in the NBA because you see it now. You had mentioned it. If you don't give a player his money, they just don't take it very well. Cade Cunningham's getting massive extensions. Jarrett Allen just got a 3-year max deal. You can't play with people's money or they get really emotional.
Yeah, I've said this era we're in the NBA is a trades and extensions era. For a while, it was free agency, probably Durant being like the biggest highlight of that mid-2010s type of moment in the NBA, where guys, every summer, it was, where are they meeting? What's the list? We all would just wait and look at Twitter all 4th of July weekend. Now it's extensions and trades. You give the extension to your player when they're eligible for it, and you trade them if and when that time comes. And I think the same will be true. I mean, it was true with the Nets for Durant. Like you mentioned, he gets the extension. He asked for a trade before it even kicks in, eventually gets traded halfway through the first year of it. And I think it'll be true for the Suns with KD if that time ever comes where they want to part ways with him. And so you agreed. You look at it as what maximizes his trade value. And I think he's just at a point in his career he's accomplished so much in his career that for the rest of it, I think he's just going to be a max guy. Maybe there's some point in time when, he is a ring chaser or something, but you look at Steph Curry, you look at LeBron James, you even look at Chris Paul, who's not a max guy anymore, but I think continues every year to make more than we think he's going to make on these contracts. I just don't think you can project that, okay, in 2026, where he's currently set to be a free agent, maybe you don't pay him 60, but you get him for 40. I just think whether it's a team trading for him or it's the Suns factoring their future plans out, you just have to assume this guy's a max player until he retires. So, again, to me, give him the deal. If you do trade him, I think the other team getting him will be just fine to pay him that much 2 years from now when he's 38. given how great this past season just was. Obviously, if a major injury happens, you're kind of screwed either way. And then, in the spirit of future planning, there's also the looming kind of thing of he does only have 2 years left. So if you don't get it done this year, you have another year of what if you fall short, or he doesn't get along with so-and-so, or just natural things in the course of people playing and competing together and being on a team and whatever. And then what if he doesn't want one next year? And then you're going into the last year of his deal. Then you don't have the leverage you need in a potential trade, and you run the risk of losing him for nothing if you can't get a trade done in the following year's free agency. So they don't have a lot of time here, and I think guaranteeing him another contract a year of his contract could actually help the Suns too. So I don't know. To me, it's hard. It's really hard to find a crack in why they shouldn't do this. But I hear your point. I think it's absolutely fair that you want to give yourself an out. I just look at the league right now, and I think the out is going to be trading him and potentially trading multiple of this big three, kind of no matter when they do it. So why not just keep going with business as usual? And then when you have to blow it up, it's going to be unfortunate, painful, probably not ideal value anyway, and you just kind of cross that bridge when you come to it.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. That's something I really hadn't even thought of, is how does it benefit the Suns, right? And you do make the good point of, like, what if you lose him for nothing? And here's my only caveat to that is, so what? Like ultimately, so what if you lose Kevin Durant for nothing? You kind of see it as a potential knock on the Suns, which I think is totally fine. But there's that other flip side of, He'll be 37 years old if it doesn't work out next year. He's going to his final year of his deal. You get off of $50 million on the books. And honestly, I just don't see a world, because we know Kevin Durant's game is going to age better as he gets older. He doesn't really run and jump into players anymore. We mentioned he had said that in a Dwayne Rankin article earlier in the year. He avoids the crash test dummies, not hitting the floor as much. He's going to be fine as he gets older. Maybe less efficient, sure. So if that's the case, and we both believe that, I don't think there's an NBA where you'll ever have no trade market for Kevin Durant, even if it's just a rental. And if that's the case, and you don't get anything for him, you're still getting off of $50 million a year sooner, and then you're only eating that Bradley Beal $50 million as well. And then I think you're setting yourself up for this little mini run right here where you're kind of not in it, but you're not out of it. You're kind of in that dead zone. And then setting yourself up for, we've got Devin Booker and $100 million to spend. Draft picks galore at that point. Matt Ishbia is super aggressive. And what do we know about sports? Aggressive mostly wins. I think that's the recipe for success. And this extension thing, it's going to be really easy to crush Matt Ishbia. It's going to be really easy. It's going to be hard to say, well, what did you want them to do? Which is kind of the side that I'm trying to play here, which is like, you can say, not really sure what you're doing, but I get it. And that's kind of the whole narrative that the Suns are going to be fighting this next year is, how is it going to be perceived to either the media, the public, or especially the national media, that they're just handing out extensions to anyone, basically saying you can fail here. And that's what happened last year, and we'll still pay you. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It doesn't really matter, because the Suns' hands are tied.
Yeah. Yeah, if they don't have Durant on the books and he were to hit free agency, just kind of to play devil's advocate to myself on the idea of them losing him for nothing, they basically would go into that season. These smaller contracts, these other guys, Allen, O'Neal, Little, they all have contracts that go into that season, but they're easy enough to move off of if need be. They might not even be at the team the end of this season for all we know. So you could go into that free agency, even if Booker and Beal were both still on the team, and have some cap space, probably. So that's not nothing. But obviously allowing Kevin Durant to just walk, if it ever, we're a long way from that, but just mapping it out, if it ever got to that point, that's not ideal. But, like you said, it would be in the idea of resetting and building whatever the next great Suns team is going to be while Devin Booker is still in his prime. But you have Nurkic off the books that year and a lot of other guys. So, it's not as if they're still going to be capped out trying to search for answers. They would have a pivot opportunity at that point. All right, let's go to some more positive. Kevin Durant became Team USA men's or women's basketball the all-time leading scorer in the history of the program. And Josh Bartelstein, the Suns CEO, gave a quote that had me thinking about Olympic KD a little bit. We'll talk through that quote next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. And yes, this summertime, the soccer tournaments are over, the Olympics winding down. The sports aren't quite what we want them to be, but FanDuel helps you keep the sports going whenever you want. And all you have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everybody, every day, all summer long. Of course, right now, we are still in the basketball mood. There is plenty of Olympic hoops going on. The women's team, massive favorites, as they always are, 26.5 points. That's just an easy win. Maybe that just makes you enjoy the game a little bit more. There's also all sorts of baseball, tennis, and golf throughout the summer, of course. Football not too far away. Plenty of stuff to look forward to at FanDuel, as well as baseball. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball, and of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's close it out, Ben. So, KD surpasses, he was already the men's leader. He surpasses Lisa Leslie as the overall, I didn't even know Lisa Leslie had that record, to be honest. I knew there was someone on the women's team. I kind of just assumed it was Diana Taurasi because in my head, anytime I think of, right, like women's hoops, records, Diana Taurasi has all the records. That's just kind of how my head goes with it. But I wanted to read this quote because on the same day this happened, I was reading this article, and Bartelstein, in that same Dwayne Rankin article, was asked about the style and how Bud might be able to make an impact on this group. And he kind of said, that's a Bud question. But he said, I think ideally we're playing a team that plays off the pass, moves the ball side to side, and we've got to get up more threes. And reading that comment from Bartelstein, I think that's music to Suns fans' ears. I think that's exactly what Suns fans want to hear about how the style of play will change. But it also sounded a heck of a lot like the style we see the Olympic squad play when they get together every 4 years, and a style that obviously, as that record shows, benefits Kevin Durant a whole heck of a lot. And I just was curious on your thoughts on if simplicity might actually make things better for Durant this year.
Simplicity in terms of roles, yes. Here was the biggest issue I thought with the Phoenix Suns last year, is Kevin Durant is best at being Kevin Durant when he's just asked to hoop. So a role, yes, where Kevin Durant is not asked to be the leader. Kevin Durant is not asked to take hold of this team. That's the Devin Booker job. Kevin Durant isn't asked to be the defensive anchor. That's whoever's job at that point. But if Kevin Durant is just asked to go get buckets, he succeeds, wins championships, and wins Olympic gold medals. In terms of the offense, in a way, again, simplicity is kind of a thing. But it's also like when you have an elite wide receiver in the NFL, you're moving him in the slot, outside, you're drawing up different route concepts. You'd be a fool, cough, cough, Cliff Kingsbury, to keep DeAndre Hopkins on one side of the field and just continuously run the same routes. So with an elite shooter, it's kind of the same way. You want that guy coming off of pick and rolls. You want to find that guy in the corner. You want to find him cutting. That's what you want to do with great players. So simplicity in terms of roles, yes. But I want to see Kevin Durant maximized in any way that seems. I want him treated like a number one wide receiver in the NFL. I want him drawn up in different sets. I want him cutting back door. I want him setting up things. I want him to be the point guard at times on this Suns team because that's how great he is. He can excel in all of that. So simplicity, yes, in terms of roles, but actually game, I want to see it as complex as possible with Kevin Durant. I want him used as a Swiss Army knife that's as good at doing everything as a Swiss Army knife can be as you would with any other tool on that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, right? Because Durant always preaches this kind of random, flowing, just going out there and hooping style, but it is one of those things where it's a little easy for you to say, Kevin Durant, because you can do everything. So it's like, is it actually as natural and fluid for all the other dudes as it might feel? I think ideally, yes, but, again, easy for you to say. I think I agree on that. Make the most of his skill set, right? He needs to do more as a, we're just talking about offense, but, just to state on the defensive end, like rim protection, rebounding, all those things I think they're going to need from him to be their best selves this season. Offensively, yeah, I was sitting there wondering, why are we not seeing them, run him off of screens more? Why are we not seeing, sets drawn up for him to be a finisher rather than the ball necessarily needing to be in his hands, whatever that might look like? So we're on the same page. I would just say that the more that I think about how this thing is going to look, part of why I like Mike Budenholzer is that he has a history of getting good stuff and building structure without being too meticulous about things. And I think that on the personnel side, the Suns have a roster now where they're going to be able to they don't have as many things they need to work around, is the way that I would put it, right? It's like when Yusuf Nurkic is out there and has to be out there so much, you kind of need to play through him because the best thing he does on offense is play make. Mm-hmm. When you have these specialist type guys like Okogie and Nasir Little and whatever out there, they're kind of black holes on offense that you just sort of send to the corner and hope the defense doesn't play off of them too much, but you're working around that. You have to try to account for it. I just envision a lot more lineups now where the Suns can play that type of free-flowing read and react style because they're just going to be able to put 5 players out there that can just do everything, have a high IQ, can shoot, can pass, can read the floor, whatever. And I just envision them getting to those types of units more easily than they did last year, where it was like, unless a handful, 5-6 guys were on the court, anything below that, it started to be a question mark and a little bit scary. So they're not going to get to Team USA levels of any of this, obviously. But I do feel optimistic that this whole thing can look a lot more like what we've seen KD thrive in. And look, he still had an All-NBA second-team season last year. So if he can get even more efficient, even more comfortable, they're going to be really grooving, I think. So I don't know. I'm optimistic it can work. I think the defensive end of the floor is honestly where more of my questions come in.
No, I am entirely optimistic. I think Mike Budenholzer gives them automatically into that second round of the NBA playoffs. That's how I feel. If the Suns had him this year, that's where they would have went. You're talking about the playing random, but not being too sophisticated, the whole Mike Budenholzer quote when it comes to all that. But that's what I want to see from Kevin Durant. The scarlet letter for Frank Vogel was casual NBA fans seeing a top 10 basketball player of all time sit in the corner and say, hey, I sell insurance for a living, and I wouldn't put Kevin Durant on the side of the court and just pray he chucks up shots and stays happy. So Mike Budenholzer is not going to do that. That's an offensive guru, as some people like to say, and also just gets more with less. So when you talk about the Okogies or the Nurks, I expect everyone to succeed. And I especially expect another All-NBA year from Kevin Durant, especially under Mike Budenholzer.
All right, lots to chew on as the offseason really, I guess, comes to an end. We're already looking toward camp now. So just a nice check-in on that side of things. Temperature check on the scheme, although we are still kind of imagining all of that. Hit follow, subscribe, guys, if you haven't already. We'll be back Friday to close things out for the week with Stephen Perjone Garner. You can check Ben out over on his YouTube channel. Again, linked in the show description below. His Twitter handle is on the screen there as well. Listen to the Jody Ayler Show on Fox Sports 910. They do great work there. Does that cover everything, Ben? I think I did. And my audience can find you that way.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't say best friend, but that's fine. We're working on it. We're getting there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Check out. Well, I should say, right? Check out the video we did on your channel last week. Touched on a little bit of this stuff at a bigger picture level.
One of my higher rated videos. The people love you, Brendon. They do.
Well, I've been around for a while. There's plenty who don't, but at least they know who I am. That goes a long way, I guess. All right, that'll wrap us up, though, guys. Again, hit follow, subscribe, get that latest show to close out the week and more as the offseason rolls on. We'll talk to you next time.